and I welcome us to opening up the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency meeting, the 9th of May 2017, and I call the agency meeting to order. This evening, we have in front of us a resolution 2017-05, a resolution of the McMinnville Urban Renewal Board authorizing the city, McMinnville city manager or designee to enter into and manage a development agreement with the Oddfellows Building LLC for the Atticus Hotel project. And with that being said, I'm going to turn the time over to our planning director, Heather Richards. Heather?
So good evening, Mayor and City Council, in your role as the Urban Renewal Board. I'm going to invite Walt Gall to join me as well. He's the chairperson of the McMinnville Urban Renewal Advisory Committee.
Oh, thank you.
So I only have 150 slides to work.
Kind of like the public hearing, huh?
Oh boy. 8 slides. Don't start cringing. All right. So before you tonight is a resolution to consider a property assistance request from the Oddfellows Building LLC for their new Atticus Hotel project. It is a recommendation coming to you from the McMinnville Urban Renewal Advisory Committee. It is for a 5-year forgivable loan for $100,000 to help them with their $8.3 million project that they're going to build in downtown McMinnville. I want to describe the project to you, talk a little bit about the parameters of the program in which this project is applying for funds, the recommendation in front of you, the funding that's available in the Urban Renewal Agency's funds at the moment and what the financial forecast is for that. So in terms of a description of the project, and we do have the members of the LLC here if you have further questions for them relative to details with their project, but it's a new hotel, 36 luxury room boutique hotel, 4 stories. It will be located on the corner of 4th and Ford in downtown McMinnville, which is in the McMinnville Urban Renewal area. 23,000 square feet. The proposed budget is more or less $8.3 million. Some numbers are moving on that as they're trying to make this project work, and you'll hear a little bit more about that probably from them. It is expected to have at least 50 plus full-time jobs. They have done an analysis that shows it will have an annual economic development impact, so a multiplier in terms of funds spent in the community of $4 million. And Oddfellows LLC is the applicant for it. To qualify for the project, to qualify for the funds, the project must be located within the Urban Renewal District, which it is. It also must be new construction or substantial rehabilitation that increases the assessed values in the district and create jobs. And that's really important because that's the overall goal of an urban renewal program and tool, and is also an overall objective of the Oregon Revised Statute relative to urban renewal. It also must comply with federal, state, and local codes, which this project does. And then locally, there's a value system that it must leverage at least $4 of private dollars to every $1 of urban renewal investment. This particular request will leverage $99 to the $1. It also must address 2 or more of the urban renewal plan goals. In terms of the urban renewal plan goals, there's 5 of them. One talks to economy. The overall goal is to encourage the economic growth of the urban renewal areas, the commercial, cultural, civic, and craft industry center for McMinnville. And then that has 4 objectives underneath it that are very specific. It's to support development of the area by assisting in the financing and provision of transportation and public infrastructure improvements. It's to assist existing businesses and support the creation of new business and employment opportunities in the area, which this project does. It's to work with property owners to promote the development and redevelopment of properties within the area, which this project also does. And it's to partner with private and public entities to leverage public investment and generate private investment, which this project does as well. So it's achieving that economic goal. There's also a goal of encouraging a unique district identity, which is enhancing the physical appearance of the district. This project is very carefully designed, so although it's new construction, it fits within the historic framework and integrity of the downtown area. It's also to encourage pedestrian orientation, and this project will do that as well by building out what is currently a vacant lot with a zero setback building footprint. It's also to encourage development of active uses such as shopping and entertainment, and in the downtown area, it's to really sort of build on that historic heritage. One of the goals is housing, which is to promote development of affordable quality housing. This project does not obviously achieve that. Another goal is historic preservation, which is relative to existing building stock and restoring those. This project does not do that either. And then the fifth goal is development and redevelopment, which is to pursue development and redevelopment opportunities that add economic, civic, craft industry, and cultural opportunities for the citizens of McMinnville, economically strengthening the urban renewal area and attracting visitors to the urban renewal area. So clearly it's meant to achieve 3 goals, and clearly it's achieving, it has to achieve 2 goals, and it's clearly achieving 3 of the urban renewal plan goals. So the McMinnville Urban Renewal Advisory Committee reviewed the request at their 2 meetings ago, and after some dialogue and discussion there, they crafted a recommendation for you to consider, which is reflected in the resolution that's in front of you tonight. Their recommendation is a 5-year forgivable loan of $100,000 plus interest, the interest being the local government investment pool interest rate plus 1%. That's relative to the fact that the city and the agency have an agreement between themselves that if the urban renewal agency ever borrows money from the city, it will pay an interest rate of local government investment pool plus 1%. So we wanted to carry that forward into this. It's to forgive that forgivable loan proportionately over 5 years based upon performance metrics. So this project's being funded because it's doing 2 things. It's increasing tax base, so that's the new improvement, new in construction. We want to ensure that that actually is successful. And then also it's bringing in that 50 plus full-time jobs, as well as the annual economic multiplier for the community, that $4 million. So we want to make sure that the hotel operates successfully as well. The loan, if neither of those things are achieved, so if the project falls short in terms of construction during the construction period for some reason, or if the hotel isn't successful in operations over that 5-year, the loan will be paid back for non-performance. One of the members of the LLC will be asked to provide a personal guarantee for the loan at the time of signing, and they've agreed to do that. And then if the project is sold, so the building and property are sold in 5 years, there's full payback of the loan as well. The basis for the recommendation was that it meets the objectives of the McMinnville Urban Renewal Plan. The Urban Renewal Plan is to encourage investment in the urban renewal area to create vitality, to create tax base, to create jobs. This project clearly achieves all of those. It also creates 50 plus jobs, which is a remarkable job generator for our community. It's also creating a $4 million annual economic multiplier for the community as well, which is also a tremendous economic development effort. The request is only 1.2% of the total project cost. So this program's been set up where the Urban Renewal Agency has the opportunity to fund 20% of the overall total project cost up to a maximum of $100,000. And that's to show that there's proportionate skin in the game from the developer as well. And the request here is only for 1.2% of the overall total project cost. That's really a sort of minimal request from them coming in for the agency, showing that their investment, their leverage of their private dollars are really significant towards that public investment into the project. In terms of need, There is need associated with this project because it's a hotel that also is going to have a ground floor restaurant tenant. They're financing their Small Business Administration loan cannot pay for the build out of the restaurant space. So it can't even bring that restaurant space into a vanilla shell opportunity. None of that's being financed through that loan process, and that's about $200,000. They're also working with their contractor on final costs for construction of it, and like everything else in McMinnville, the construction costs are rising and some numbers have come in larger than anticipated, and so they are working through a process of value engineering. So this $100,000 into the project will be critical for them in terms of being able to retain some amenities they want to retain for the project. There's been some discussion of funding availability. We provided a financial forecast for you in the staff report. This is a model that was put together based on some projections. So I want to caution you, these aren't exact numbers. It's actually conservative to what we see as numbers coming in today. But I think there's been some misunderstanding as to how this model reads. So I just wanted to walk you through that. The first column that says revenue, that's actually annual revenue. So revenue that we expect annually to come in with the increment. And then there's another column called fund balance. That's your beginning fund balance. So this is the actual cash flow column and not the annual revenue is not that. So when you're looking at this particular project and its impact, it will start in fiscal year 2018. The line items that we want to walk through is first, what's the beginning fund balance, which is $259,000 more or less based on this model. It's actually larger than that. We've recently discovered as we're going through the budget process. And then you add that to the projected annual revenues. That gives you a cash flow of $431,000. Then you take all the what's forecasted to be budgeted as expenditures out of that, and that leaves you with an ending fund balance for that fiscal year of $138,000. Again, a conservative number. So clearly there's cash in the bank to help support what's being proposed in front of you. We also showed how the 5-year payments of $20,000 a year, I'll talk you through what the recommendation is for that, also impacts this financial analysis by keeping it in a positive net cash flow. But the other thing it does is it allows enough cash flow to be able to respond to other projects that may come in. If, let's say there's another developer that comes with a $9 million new construction project and a request for $100,000, we want to be able to respond to them, and there is the opportunity to do so. I also want to point out to you that the model shows what we're forecasting in the budget for next year. So we've put into this model the cost of the parking study, the $25,000 that we've set aside to start the 3rd Street project in terms of a community dialogue, and that it also has an additional $80,000 in here for that property assistance program that hasn't been allocated or obligated to any other projects. So it provides opportunity for the agency to still consider other projects, be them small or large, and there's still that positive net cash flow at the end of the fiscal year. So I think there was some confusion as to that particular financial forecast and how it was represented in the staff report, and Marcia is here also to answer any questions that you may have regarding that. It is a new urban renewal district, relatively. I will tell you, I've worked for 4 different urban renewal programs, and to have a project like this come in the 4th or 5th year is something that most communities would be salivating over, because it's a new construction project, it's a significant investment, and it will generate that tax base, which will then pay for future projects as well, and the tax increment. But because it is a relatively new urban renewal area, what we wanted to do is make sure that we were really cognizant of stewardship of that cash flow. So the recommendation from MURAC is that the Urban Renewal Agency enters into a 5-year payment plan with the city for $100,000 plus that same interest rate, to pay for $100,000 of the SDCs associated with this project. So currently it's estimated, you have an estimate in your staff report, it's gone up a little bit because we know more about that restaurant that's coming in on the ground floor. It's about $111,000. So the agency will be able to pay if approved, will be able to pay $100,000 of that SDC costs. It doesn't mean that the SDCs are being waived. It's just that the agency actually is paying the city for it. So the hard dollars are still hitting the coffers in terms of those public improvement projects. But there is a provision in the city code to allow the city to enter into payment plans with other entities for the SDCs, and also to do it in a deferred payment process. So after visiting with the different utility funds and how they're impacted by this SDC deferment, the utility funds, the transportation and the wastewater utility funds are in such a place where deferring the $100,000 over 5 years does not impact any future capital improvement project planned in that time frame. However, it does allow for the agency to continue to maintain some cash flow through the process. So the recommendation is that the agency enter into that agreement with the city for 5 years to make those payments, with the first payment happening prior to the certificate of occupancy, which we expect to be issued in the next fiscal year. So with that, that kind of sums up the terms of the recommendation before you from MURAC. Walt is here to answer any questions you may have of him in terms of the dialogue that happened at MURAC and the consideration for this. And again, the members of Oddfellows Building LLC are here as well if you have questions about their project.
Okay. Heather, thank you for that concise picture of what we're trying to do. It was very helpful. Walt, anything from your perspective as the chair of the...
It's always difficult to follow Heather in making a report. I think her report was very comprehensive. We had what I believe was a thorough conversation about this project on 2 different occasions. There was, I don't want to speak for any other member, all of the voting members at the meeting where this was approved voted in favor of it. I just want to speak to you for a moment for my thoughts at the time I voted in favor of this recommendation. And those were, first, that this project obviously meets the criteria as Heather has showed, and as the staff report is thoroughly documented. It was a very well documented application. This type of application requires significant information to be provided to the city staff, and legal staff had a chance to vet that information. We received a summary form of that information in the form of an excellent staff report similar to the one that you received. The first factor that caught my eye about this project was that in our overall urban renewal plan criteria, we look to try and get at least a $1 to $4 leveraging. So for every $1 of public urban renewal money, we generate at least $4 of private money. This application is $1 to $99. I mean, it's a dream from the standpoint of leveraging of public funds. Second, it has a very high job creation factor, and when you're talking about urban renewal and economic development within an urban renewal district, creating 50 jobs with one project is a very attractive opportunity, and I felt that this was a terrific proposal from that standpoint. Third, it had a performance standard incorporated into the proposal, which was a 5-year loan that required a 5-year period of performance and only a partial forgiveness of the loan as that performance was undertaken, so that every year there would be 1/5 of that loan obligation forgiven if the performance standards set out in the development agreement were met. And I felt that was an important safeguard in terms of preserving and assuring that the urban renewal dollars would achieve the desired result. Fourth, and this was an issue that Heather commented on briefly, last year, after 5 years of going through this process, we asked that staff rehire the original consultants, Eco Northwest, that had done the original financial projections for this urban renewal plan, and take another current look. And we got that report in June of last year. The revenue projection you have is not an old revenue projection, it's a new revenue projection. It's based upon the latest current information, and it is a conservative projection which projects a level of growth that is lower than has occurred over the last 10 years, including the 2008 to 2014 period. So the assumption that goes into this revenue projection is conservative by nature. I'm comfortable that we are very, very likely to be able to perform that revenue projection, and by limiting the cost to the renewal district to only $20,000 a year, I don't believe that we're jeopardizing the ability of the urban renewal district to do other projects, which I think to me was a very important factor. Finally, and this is not actually a criteria, but to me it's important, and that is, you don't often have an opportunity with a major project like this to be able to provide support to a group of local investors who are going to produce a business that is going to retain the profit from that business in your community. It's not uncommon to have large developers come in, bring a development to you, create something that's profitable, but then those profits may end up in Chicago or New York or Seattle. This is a homegrown project. To me, that gave it a slight advantage in my view, in terms of its desirability to the community. And that, again, that's not a formal criteria, but to me it was a factor in my thinking. I believe that this is a good project. We have a project going right now on Alpine Street, which is a build it and they will come project, and that takes a lot of trust and faith, and we have moved forward on that. We have a bunch of smaller renovation projects, small mini grants that we've given out, and we have 2 currently on our table that we're looking at. This is kind of the in-between. This is a major subsidy. It is taking money from the urban renewal district and putting it into the SDC funds of the city, both sewer and transportation. I believe those are the 2. And so it is essentially shifting city resources from one pocket to another, but by doing that, it's freeing up some resources that the developer has to be able to build a better project and a more viable project with a better chance of success. And to me, that was persuasive. So with that, I would take any questions the district board has to offer.
Thank you, Walt. Before we do that, Jeff had a comment. And
Thank you, Board Chair, members of the board. Just to add some additional context to the comments that Heather made, the McMinnville Urban Renewal District is the 7th district that I've had direct administrative involvement in. 4 of those districts have aged out of existence. 1 is in its 11th year. 1 is in its 7th year. This will be the first new construction $8 million project that any of those districts that I've been involved in will have seen. So it's unique in my experience.
thank you, Jeff. With that being said, I'm going to open it up to the board for questions of Heather or Walt at this point. Kevin?
Yeah, this is a pretty exciting project. A few questions that I have. At what point did the developers approach the city for these funds, and or did we go to them saying this is an opportunity? How did this come about?
The city, the MURAC became aware probably 6 or 7 months ago that this might be coming. It was confidential at that time as to what project was developing, and we were not privy to that. But we did get rumblings that there was something on the horizon that was fairly major, and that it might be coming to the committee for support. It came, I think the first that we had a more specific knowledge of it from my standpoint was when Heather and myself met with a couple of the ownership people. Probably 3 to 4 months ago, as I recall. We've had 2 meetings where they made an initial presentation that was about what would be coming, and then a formal presentation was made in April, and we acted at that time. You had previously, we could not act earlier than that because you had not adopted a loan grant program that we were discussing for some months and then came back to you for adoption, and you did pass the resolutions, so we had then the availability of this program to be able to take action.
And if I may add, I think that loan discussion happened when we saw a gap in our looking down the road, because we knew we were looking at Alpine Avenue, but we had no interim program in place from a loan standpoint. And Heather, with her experience, says, you know, we've got to have this shorter term plan. And I think that's when we started to look more deeper into a vision of what that might look like in the shorter term.
I think that's a good description.
Yeah, so MURAC was having discussions about the need to expand the property assistance program per the plan in work sessions during the MURAC meetings. The development team learned about that and then started having discussions with us about their potential development. They officially applied for it on March 17th.
My second question is around the, I guess the capital for this project. Do they need this money? I mean, if we say no, is it not going to happen? Or is it just, I mean, I don't understand why we would even be entertaining this, honestly, because if they have the money to build it, then why would they need our money to help them build it? Because we could be using that money someplace else.
So I think it's best to ask them that question, but I guess I would say from a program perspective, the criteria for the program itself is demonstrating need is always tough, especially when you're talking about the last stopgap financing on an $8.5 million project, because if you have to value engineer $100,000 out, you figure out how to do that. But it also compromises the integrity of the project to value engineer out. So when talking about the stopgap financing to make a project move forward, one of the things Urban Renewal wants to do is to ensure that the project is successful. So if there's a need in terms of making sure the amenities remain in the project that are going to put it over the hump to really make it that economic generator, that's one prescribed need. If the other need is to make sure it's not overburdened with debt as it starts its operations, so that it can operate successfully in those first couple of years where most new businesses are in a very vulnerable position, that's also serving that need as well.
But what's on the table is what percentage of the overall budget?
1.2%.
Yeah, I don't see how that's gonna, I mean, that's gonna be gone in a day. I don't see how that, for a project of that size, I just don't get it.
Let me just give you, my reaction to that in this way. I would expect on our committee that we will and over time will receive proposals mostly from non-local sources that come to us and say, if you don't support our project, we're not going to build it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a very common statement. And that threat of not moving forward if you don't provide the level of support that they are in a sense demanding is not. It's not that it's unusual. It's just that it's a little disheartening when you compare it to the commitment of people who may have to struggle but are committed to moving forward and are simply asking for your help. And so when I look at that contrast, which one do I want to help more? I want to help the one that I think is more committed, not the one that I believe is more dependent.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions?
Who are the partners and the investors in this? Are they in the audience?
Yes.
And we'll have an opportunity.
All four of them are here.
Yeah.
I see that word.
Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question. You alluded to it, Heather, and you stated something about another allergies. Another $9 million project coming into town. I think you alluded to it too, Walt, of what would be the response to another $9 million project coming into town, requesting the same $100,000 grant loan situation? What would be the response to that?
So so first of all, I think we should all do a little happy dance if that was coming in the next couple of years, because much like the city manager said, these are very, very rare opportunities. When the happy dance is done, then it's the same sort of vetting, which is it achieving the urban renewal criteria? At what level is it achieving those criteria? So 50 plus jobs, a $4 million economic multiplier. I mean, I don't know if Jody is still here or not, but working in economic development, if you think about how the Governor's Strategic Reserve Fund and Enterprise Zone, I mean, all the tools for economic development that are available in the state to capture companies and create jobs, there is much more than 100,000 being thrown at a 50-plus job generator and a $4 million annual multiplier. That's, honestly, in that scheme over here. So I would say that we would vet it through that same process of what is the benefit to the community? What is it doing to achieve the urban renewal plan? What's the long-term benefit? So this is a hotel in operation with a pretty major investment done by a local team, as Walt just described. So the risk in terms of the long-term sustainability and its commitment to the community is lower that they're going to stay here and operate that in this community.
I want to say, I agree with what Heather said. I also want to say that each project has to stand on its own and is a separate calculation and a separate assessment. And I can't say that I would be as enthusiastic about another $9 million project, but if we could achieve a similar leverage of public funds, I would have to take a very serious look at consideration for approval of that.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So I guess one of the things that I would observe is we'd love to have that problem in front of us. We'd love to have a series of $5 to $10 million private sector investments to talk about in the context of the community's first urban renewal district. So I would welcome that challenge. I will tell you that the typical philosophy around these sorts of programs with respect to urban renewal is that the support and the incentivizing of early projects is money better spent than late-in projects. You have to recognize that first-in projects are taking a greater risk than last-in projects, or in some cases, projects that were on the boards already before an urban renewal district was started. So in this particular case, I think this project fits those criteria. I think it's exactly in alignment with the program that this board has previously adopted, and I'd look forward to wrestling with 3 or 4 more of these in the next 5 or 10 years.
I couldn't have said it better.
Any other comments for Heather or for Walt? Okay, go ahead, Adam.
Initially, I was worried about it constraining dollars, but with how you guys presented it, those concerns for myself have been alleviated, and I appreciate your presentation and all your input.
Sure.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, if no other, thank you for your presentation. To help Kevin, let me just introduce by a raise of hand. Aaron Stevenson is a principal. Rob Stevenson is a principal. Brian Shea is a principal, and Jeb Ladine. So that is the Oddfellow LLC. So, now, what I'd like to do at this point is we have written testimony that was received by the board today from the Fellows Building LLC, but I turn to that group, and would anyone like to address the committee? Aaron? And again, given the lateness of the hour, I'd like to limit our presentations to 5 minutes, okay?
Absolutely. And do I need to sign in, Mr. Mayor, for an urban renewal?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for entertaining our request. And I think that Heather and Walt did a really terrific job giving you an overview of the project. I have a 110-page business plan with miles and miles of data, and I could frankly talk to you tonight for hours about the Atticus and how excited we are about it and how excited we are about this project for McMinnville. But I would rather answer your questions specifically about the project and entertain anything you'd like to hear from us specifically about it.
Well, I'm going to start out, Aaron, because one of the criteria that I have in looking at this is your background and the proven experience that you have. And so if you could let the board know a little bit of what you've been doing in town, because I think it parlays a little bit with the uniqueness of what you're building and what you're trying to accomplish, and understanding a need out in the marketplace.
Absolutely. So 7 years ago, actually, this month, my husband and I opened Third Street Flats, which is a boutique lodging company in downtown McMinnville, with our first location at our historic McMinnville Bank building, which now we would describe that as being above the Bitter Monk. We renovated 4 historic apartments and started renting them out on a nightly basis in what we would describe as a fusion lodging experience. And that business took off out the gate. We were very excited to start a business during an economic downturn and still see it be very successful. After about a year and a half, the business was so busy that we decided to sell half of it, and I took on my partner, Brian. And Brian and I together own Live McMinnville LLC. 2 years after that, we formed a second LLC with my dad and bought the Oddfellows Lodge and opened up 7 more flats in that building. So we now operate 11 luxury nightly apartment rentals in downtown McMinnville. At the present time, we represent the most expensive lodging that is available in downtown McMinnville, and we host people from all over the country, all over the world. Primarily, they're here for wine tourism. We see some amazing people, and it's been a wonderful experience for us. One thing that we have noted, though, is that as an essentially self-service property, there is really an unmet need in our community. Wine tourism attracts a very high wage individual. We've got a lot of data that backs that up. And while our Third Street Flats product is a fabulous product, it really caters to independent travelers. Neither of our buildings have elevators, and we don't have 24-hour on-site staff. We partner with our Stewart wine bar to distribute our keys and serve as our concierge at our Oddfellows building. We have the same partnership with the Bitter Monk at our historic McMinnville Bank building. But we recognize that there is an unmet need for McMinnville. And when it comes to a full-service lodging option, McMinnville doesn't have that right now. There is no lodging here that meets the need of a buyer who's coming to buy $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 of wine over a weekend and really is looking for a full service experience with concierge, valet, room service, and all of those amenities. So data also suggests that an overnight visitor spends 3 times as much in your community as a day tripper. So while those wine buyers and those wine tourists are coming through McMinnville, maybe grabbing lunch, doing some wine tasting, they're being forced to spend the night right now in Portland or Newburgh because McMinnville doesn't have lodging on offer that meets their very specific needs. I know for a fact we have at Third Street Flats hosted some very, very high net worth individuals who don't mind our staircases and don't need that fully catered experience, but we have a strong belief, and we have market analysis to back it up, that suggests that there is an unmet need in our community right now, and we intend to meet that need in a way that we feel really fits McMinnville, and that is with a 36-room boutique hotel in downtown McMinnville. Code would have allowed us to build a 120-room hotel on that site, but that really wasn't the vision that we had for the project. It didn't feel right for McMinnville or for us and what we want to offer our guests, which is a really personal experience where we help our guests at the Atticus feel a sense of connection to our community. And I could talk a lot about all of the local partnerships we have lined up, about all of the local products that we're going to be featuring in the hotel, but I really do feel like we are going to offer something very special, and that our 7 years of experience in the lodging business has taught us a lot. It's taught us a lot about what makes a vacation rental business successful, and it's taught us a lot about the gaps in McMinnville in terms of the lodging marketplace.
Okay, our 5 minutes is up, but thank you, because I thought that was important, going along with what Walt says, local ownership, but also understanding the marketplace. So what I'm going to do right now is would anyone else from the Odd Fellows Building LLC like to address any other questions or a presentation?
I still have just one question.
Okay.
I want to be really supportive of this, and I'm open to these loan agreements and the whole concept, but I'm just curious, like, do you really need the money? Are you going to be able to leverage this for additional money, or is it just kind of a cushion?
I actually, while Heather and Walt were taking that question, I was kind of jumping in my chair back there because I really wanted to answer that myself. So we're working with a construction company, R&H Construction out of Portland, and we've been designing our plans with R&H from the beginning. So it's in essence a design build project. They've given us 4 price sets on this project while we were designing it to make sure that we were designing a building that fit our budget and fit our needs. The last price that we got before we received our bids was in November. Between the November price set, which represented complete construction plans, we've made no additions between November and March when we went out for bid. Drywall alone went up by $189,000 between November and March. Not our drywall is $189,000. Our drywall increased by $189,000. So the marketplace right now is one where we're seeing huge increases. When you ask me what $100,000 means to this project, it means a lot to this project. It means paver stone parking lot instead of an asphalt parking lot. It means beautiful flower baskets on the exterior of the building. I've spent the last 2 weeks parsing every dollar in this project down to amounts in the 500, and I could very quickly tell you exactly what $100,000 does mean to us. We're also very grateful for the support of the Small Business Administration, but it did leave gap financing for us because we don't own the restaurant in the building. They will not fund any portion of that construction. So to answer your question, Kevin, it's a great question. It's an important question. And yes, there is real need within this project as we are dealing with a marketplace where construction costs are exploding, and we do have a set loan amount from the bank. So there is real need, and the dollars will make a real tangible difference within this project.
I appreciate that, and I do have absolute confidence in you and in the team that you're working with to make this work. And I really appreciate the way you've explained that to me. And the reason why I was asking, and I think you understand, that if somebody comes to me with $8 million and asks for 100,000, I'm thinking we have $8 million. If there's another company out there that they have only 100,000 and they need another 100,000, they might have a greater need.
Absolutely.
But I catch the vision of what you want to do, and I think clearly the return on this investment as far as property tax value is significant. So you've won me over, but that's why I was asking those questions.
Thank you. It's a great question to ask. And I really think this is such an important dialogue for us to have as a community. It's the first time we're going through this, and I think they're all great questions. We appreciate them.
And I just, thank you, Aaron, but I do want to remind board members of the Renewal Agency that we ought to stay focused on the criteria of the loan, which that question was not a part of the criteria. So we're not evaluating we're looking at the criteria that we passed in the loan program. And again, it gave clarity. I think it's really important, but we do have a set of criteria that we're looking at. I just want to remind everyone on...
This isn't really like a land use thing, though. We can decide not to honor that. I mean,
right.
I don't think we need to be tied to that.
Well,
criteria.
I understand that, but at the same token...
If they meet the qualifications, then yeah, we could give the money, but we could always not give them the money.
Well, absolutely. But again, we set the criteria.
Right.
Okay.
Mayor, can I address?
Go ahead.
Since nobody else is going to come up here. To Aaron, can you describe briefly the streetscape that's going to be going in, which sidewalk, curb and gutter, expanded corner, landscaping, tree wells, anything like that, that would actually, you guys need to fund and then dedicate to the city?
That's a really great question, and our landscape plan is currently still under review, but the pictures up on the screen give you a good perspective of what we've got going. There's a landscape area, if you look at the bottom right photo to the far left, that this is actually an older set of photos. The further along now, and so we've got a really lovely landscaped section there. Within the parking lot, we're really fighting hard to maintain the paver stone. You know, that's one of the items that has been under discussion this week. We think it'd be a beautiful addition to downtown McMinnville. In the long run, we'd also look to that space potentially as outdoor event space in the summer. We do also have benches that we're including. We have a valet stand that will be on that exterior piece. I believe that the awnings featured in this picture don't actually meet the downtown design standard. They were from an earlier phase, but we do have really lovely awnings on the building as well. I know that there is discussion about the downtown landscape plan, and we are absolutely open to all of the conversations. We would love for this to be a feature of downtown McMinnville and what downtown McMinnville can look like from an exterior landscape design standpoint. And we're excited for that opportunity to make this a real showpiece.
Okay, but you've got to go in and replace curbs, sidewalks.
We do, yes,
everything
that's
like that.
correct.
That's in your budget.
That is in our budget, and that is part of the plan, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I got one.
Go ahead, Adam.
This is more from a concerned citizen point of view, but parking. So I realize that you're within the zone that you don't have to provide parking spaces, but it's currently a parking lot. You had 36 rooms and you had 50 employees. That's a lot more cars. Where do you envision all these cars to be parked at?
So that's a really great question, and I will tell you that at every presentation I have done, whether we were set to talk about parking or not, parking comes up, and it's another one of those really great dialogues for us to have. I remember when I was a kid growing up in McMinnville, and 3rd Street had a 50% vacancy rate, and there was lots of parking because nobody wanted to come to downtown McMinnville. And kudos to the people in the room who had the vision in the 80s and the 90s to revitalize 3rd Street, make it a place that people are crawling to get into now, which is a really wonderful thing for our community. So you're correct, our project is within the no parking requirement zone. In fact, we were having this conversation today. Our hotel consultant said, you know, this is a wonderful thing, you know, you don't have to spend any money on parking, you should not spend any money on parking. And we said, no, you know, we really want to build as much parking as we're able to build on the site, because this parking lot in particular is controlled by our valet. It's got 10 parking spots in it, but we can actually stack cars, so we can put 13 cars there. We've got 2 more spots in front of the hotel for valet, so we have 15 there total, and then we're leasing additional off-site parking spots to meet the rest of our needs. So we aren't being required by the city to provide parking, but we really feel that parking is an important issue. We want to take care of it for our guests. We want to do our part within the city of McMinnville, and so we are providing parking for the guests at the hotel. Parking studies also show that, and we see this with our own guests right now at 3rd Street Flats, that a hotel guest will do absolutely anything to not put their car in a 2-hour parking spot, because they're here for 24, 48 hours or longer, and they don't want to go move that car. So even if we weren't to provide the parking, much like McMinnville's, I think the hotel guests would avoid our retail parking spots in downtown McMinnville. As to the employees of the hotel, which is another great question, as a community, I'm really happy that McMinnville has kicked off a parking study, because it is an issue as we continue to grow, as we continue to attract downtown businesses. We do have to look at the long-term parking needs, and those employees absolutely will need parking spots in downtown McMinnville. We feel like we have obviously more than met the requirement by providing spaces for all of our guests. If we're able to provide lease enough additional spaces for our own employees, we'll absolutely do that. That has to do with the supply that is on the market. But we will do everything that we can to provide that need. And we are heartened that the city is taking a hard look at parking as an overall issue. It's an important thing.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, any other questions for Aaron? Aaron, thank you for answering the questions, and thank you, Oddfellows Building LLC, for your being here and supporting what we're trying to accomplish in our discussions tonight. I'd like to read into the record, we received a letter from Mark Davis dated May 5th, and I think each of you have received a copy of that. Mark addresses 6 areas of his concern. Many of those concerns have been addressed tonight, so I just want to make sure that that is mentioned for the record. At this point, I would like to open it up for anyone that would like to address the board. JW? And again,
slides.
no, but we are going to limit it to 5 minutes, so put it in fast gear. Welcome.
Thanks. It's past my bedtime. J.W. Milligan. I reside in an office at 624 Northeast 2nd, P.O. Box 1610. I do have a letter I'll give you. Dear Mayor Hill and members of the council and the Urban Renewal Committee, I'd like to testify against the gift of $100,000 in taxpayer money free of charge to the Atticus Hotel. As I've stated in the past, I am not against urban renewal or the proposed hotel development. I would suggest that if the city's determined to help the Atticus, that you consider instead granting a true non-forgivable loan. The Urban Renewal Committee cannot give away free money. The stated purpose of the McMinnville Urban Renewal is to provide an ongoing source of GAP financing. GAP financing is often referred to as a bridge loan or intermediate financing until full funding can be obtained or until project achieves significant cash flow. In any case, it's still a loan to be paid back to the lender. What the city is offering to the Atticus amounts to a grant for a for-profit entity disguised as a loan. The only circumstance which a loan is not forgiven upon completion is if the Atticus fails to hold up its end of the bargain in delivering jobs, which, given the vague criteria relayed to me, it appears that this would only happen if the Atticus is a complete failure. If the Atticus is successful, the city taxpayer will never see the $100,000 so-called loan repaid. Nowhere in the city's urban renewal project, in the urban renewal loan grant application, is the word free money there. There's no grant, it all refers to loan, and I would suggest that you read these tenets in here. And there's no provision to convert to free money. The urban renewal type program was set up to offer true loans, not grants of free money. How can the city so generously give away taxpayer money to a for-profit entity when it is not allowed to? In addition, no project finance is provided or proof of need. Through a public request, I made a public request of records. The city has refused to release any financial pro formas, appraisal, or market analysis for the project. When giving away taxpayer money, transparency in financing, accounting, and planning is standard nationwide. I have no clue about the $4 million multiplier, the 50 jobs, any of that stuff. None of that has been provided to the public. As a local example, nonprofit subsidized housing projects are required to disclose the detailed finances information in public documents. Given the city's refusal to release this information, I can only conclude that the city is either improperly withholding or never requested them from the Atticus in the first place. Why is a for-profit hotel, which has produced mostly low-wage, low-skilled jobs, receiving preferential treatment, especially given that nonprofit housing projects are arguably more needed and yet face more hurdles to receive a fraction of the financing? I'd also urge the city not to play favoritism. Pay attention to the criteria. It is that there's a conflict of interest here. The owners of the News Register, for instance, hold 25% ownership of the project and the LLC. As an important player in the McMinnville politics, it is even more important that standard disclosures of finances, general transparency, and public discussion of this project be preserved in keeping with McMinnville's principles and values. If this project is to go forward, and I do believe that it should, then it should be done right, in the light of day or not at all. Also, the planned use of the funds is ineligible for city grants. Tenant improvement projects are not eligible for city funds in this format. I think you've seen it already, a testimony that they would be used for tenant improvements. According to the staff report, the Atticus Hotel has received financing for the entire project. Again, none of that information is provided, with the exception of tenant improvements for the planned restaurant space, which is estimated at $200,000. As a former commercial real estate agent, I say this is normal. Once a hotel has signed a lease for its restaurant space, it would go to the bank for a loan. It would in most cases split the cost 50-50. It is pure that the city is proposing to finance a specific aspect of the project which is ineligible. It's specifically ineligible in the grant program. Any city grants fund would have to be specifically precluded from this purpose. Also in the project, funds have to be available for this. The McMinnville Urban Renewal Program criteria for loans is very clear. All loans under this program are subject to the availability of program funds. As in Mark Davis's letter, there is no money available for this. It also would crowd out future years. In the forecast, it shows, if you look at the next year, $20,000 for grants. All of it would go to the Atticus Hotel for the last 4 years. There's no criteria established for use of taxpayer funds. Taxpayer money.
30 seconds.
Okay. It's not limited. Taxpayers throughout the city have spent substantial sums of money to promote and protect the McMinnville downtown, and that is why the hotel is there in the first place. There are other needs down there, such as road improvements, underground utilities, sidewalks, environmental remediation, parking, and protection of many of the unreinforced historic structures that are downtown that you heard this morning. Hopefully that's 5 minutes.
Thank you. Any questions for JW at this point? Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion among committee members. Hearing none.
Maybe we should, for me, it's a wonderful project. I think that they're well qualified for the grant loan. And it's a good tool for the motivation of this investment, because no matter what their financial situation is, it's still a monumental risk to go in and invest $8 or $9 million in our downtown. So it's a risk that this LLC is willing to take because they have confidence in McMinnville. And they've got some experience, and that confidence in McMinnville goes a long way, I think, with me, to where we can expect success. We want success. We want them to be profitable, and I don't think it's about profitability. It's about the re-energizing of a certain area of our city that needs help, and this goes right along with all the direction that we've been trying to put together for the last few years. And this is just a remarkable project that's been alluded to many times. Myself personally, I couldn't think of a better way to renew McMinnville is to create structures like this. And yes, I'm all for the subsidy or the motivation to carry it forward and almost be as a partner with the group, and to where we're all working synergistically, if you want to call it that, mutually beneficial, and to move forward into a bright future. And I think this is a great start here. So I'm all for it. I'm all for the $100,000 grant. So
Thank you, Alan. If I may, I just wanted to share just a thought. I'm a non-voting member unless I have to break a tie, so if I want to get a word in edgewise, I've got to do it now. I remember back when we started as a council talking about urban renewal, and it was something that we really wanted to investigate, but we didn't know much about. And we took a 6 to 8 month period of training ourselves and understanding from the very kindergarten level up to advanced degree by the time that we were finished. And we came as a group and said, this is something we needed to do. We hit a perfect storm in that when we were prepared and we went out for the urban renewal, we did our study, we hit a low value of property. And that's a great time to be able to do what we've done. Now, I've read a number of things where we've seen the increase in the income that's coming in has been through appreciation. Well, again, we did it right, okay, because the appreciation's given us about a 14.5%, 15% growth since the urban renewal has been put into place. Now, the other piece is I've had an opportunity to serve on the downtown improvement area that turned into our urban renewal advisory committee, and I've been there for almost every discussion meeting on a monthly basis, and I can tell you that when this project came, I did as Jody, or I know it was Heather, I did the happy dance because it hit the criteria. It truly did. Local ownership with a proven track record of this is something that we needed. I can't think of a better way of utilizing urban renewal dollars, of having a project so early on that pays us back within 2 years. At $60,000 a year, it pays us back. Now, again, it takes away from our 30 million, but we can change the parameters of the urban renewal at some point if we want to. If we see things going faster, Heather's told us about opportunities that she's been involved in times in her past. So again, I come back and say that from my perspective of one that's been in almost every meeting and discussion, non-voting, so I just get to listen, but it hits criteria. And then the last thing that's outside of the criteria, but I want to talk a little bit about, another real critical passion of mine is our TLT, and we went through that same process. And here we have an opportunity in 2018 to see about $200,000 coming in TLT monies that are going to allow us to promote our community. In one year, 200,000, and it's going to allow us to do some things. So here I come back, and it's not a criteria, but it's an aspect that is going to allow us to showcase our community even more by doing what we do. So those are my thoughts, just from an outside perspective. Any other comments?
I can add something too.
Go ahead, Adam.
Coming into tonight, I did have concerns and reservations about certain aspects of it, but overall was excited for the project and what it brings to the downtown core. And after listening to everybody present, those concerns have been alleviated, and I'm in full support of it with Alan.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any other?
Yeah, I'd just like to state publicly that, well, first of all, JW, thank you for your remarks, but I am completely satisfied with the disclosure, transparency, the integrity of the advisory committee. I think it's gone along very openly. I think there's criteria is met. I think the criteria may change through the years too, depending on what the needs are.
Yeah.
But as far as some of the points that JW raised, I'm very confident that it's gone the way it should go with integrity and openness, and so I'm in full support of it. So,
I've sat in on the meetings. I feel it fully meets the criteria. I think for the level of risk and everything that they are taking on, that it's a small thing that we do to approve this.
Okay. Well, thank you for the testimony, those that are out in the audience, every one of you. I'm then going to ask for a motion to approve resolution number 2017-05, a resolution of the McMinnville Urban Renewal Board authorizing the McMinnville City Manager or designee to enter into and manage a development agreement with the Odd Fellows Building LLC for the Atticus Hotel project.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilor Rudin and seconded by Councilor Garvin. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay? Hearing none, this resolution is passed unanimously. With that, we are to a point where we will conclude the meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency meeting this evening. Thank you.
We're done?